Hello, hi, and welcome to Transformative, the show that is hosted by someone with no expertise, but I do have experience and internet access, so that basically counts. I am that person, and my name is Parker, and today I'm going to talk about identity and all of the fun that comes with. Identifying yourself is something that every single person has to do. If you're lucky, then you're able to figure stuff out pretty early, but for a lot of people, they'll end up having a midlife crisis because they don't know who they are. It's really tricky to figure yourself out because nobody can tell you exactly what to do. But there are people who can help. Today, I'm going to try to be one of those people. In this episode, I'll be talking about what identity is, things to make up your journey, and how to make it easier, my personal journey with identity, and then to wrap it all up, where to go on the internet to help with your journey. I will warn you now that I do mention suicide, and there are a couple of links to suicide hotlines at the end of this, so please, if that is a trigger for you, don't listen any further. We're going to start by talking about what identity is, because that's pretty hard. It's pretty hard to figure yourself out if you don't even know what you're figuring out. So, identity has a lot of meanings. Unless you're a sociologist, then the widely accepted definition of identity is that it is your self-image, how you see yourself, and just your overall self-confidence. If you are a sociologist, then the identity would be less like psychological identity, your self-image, and more like social identity, what the groups you belong to say about you. Since we're talking about self-identification, I'm going to be talking about psychological identity the most. But both are still important. Don't diminish social identity just because I'm not talking about it. Haha, it's funny that I think I have that much influence. Anyways, identity has a lot of aspects. One of the largest parts of identity for most people is gender. It can play a huge role in how you see yourself and how you behave in a group. Other aspects have a tendency to vary in importance depending on the situation, but they are always there. Just because you aren't showing that part of your identity doesn't mean that that isn't a part of your identity. Some other aspects include your goals, morals, beliefs, faith, attitude, race, age, romantic or sexual orientation, and education. Obviously, you have no say over some of those things. If everybody got to choose their race, then I feel like there would be a lot less racism, but the other things you can make your own, because your identity is what you make it. The biggest thing that I'm going to try to push in this episode is that nobody can say your identity except for you. Nobody can say, hey, you're that thing, when in reality you aren't, because you're the only one that actually knows you, even if some people say that they know you better than you know yourself. They're wrong. Don't listen to them. Of course, with many other things, there are conflicts. Unlike many other things, there are probably more conflicts in figuring out your identity. So, even though your identity should be what you make it, it's often shaped by what other people think of you. Because of society's rules and regulations, with, I would love to say hefty quotation marks, but that's basically what they are, people end up sacrificing parts of themselves just because they want to be accepted. I feel like everybody's gone through that at some point, just peer pressure and overall This is called identity negotiation, where you, as the name states, have to negotiate your identity with society. Say, hey, I'll stop being this thing as long as I can be this thing. It's not great. Social rules that you've been forced into and personal experiences can all affect what you associate with different aspects of your identity, which can, in turn, affect what you will let yourself be in certain situations. These experiences can end up with you deciding to trade those parts of yourself for social acceptance. Which, again, the thing I'm trying to push in this episode is that you shouldn't trade a part of yourself for anything, because your identity is what you make it, and really, nobody else should give a crap about what you are. But that's not how society works, so we all just have to conform and fit in. But that's not right either, because why would you want to fit in? Fitting in is boring, and normal is boring, but normal is what makes some people happy, and that's okay. Anyways, in order to go on that journey, you do need a support system. Just people who are there to help you out. really helps you to stay true to yourself and not really worrying about being accepted, because you know that the people that you surround yourself with will accept you no matter what. The definition of a good support system is a network of people who provide an individual with practical or emotional support. In layman's terms, it's a group of people that you surround yourself with because they make you feel good. To make the brain go, woo! The goal is to help you decrease stress and provide guidance, or, as I intellectually put it, make the brain go, woo. There are always toxic people in your life too, and toxic people suck. And toxic people doesn't just mean a peer or like somebody your age. It can definitely mean an adult or somebody older than you, or authority figures, or just basically anybody around you that, oh boy, that just isn't great for your mental health. So, as I just kind of said, toxic people suck. They can hinder your development and just really bring down your vibes, man. Toxic person can be really hard to spot if they're good enough at it. Or, if you're in an emotionally abusive relationship, then they'll keep on dragging you in and you'll keep on making excuses for them. Typically, if you make excuses for them when your friends are saying, hey, they're a bad person, and you're like, no, I swear they aren't, chances are they probably are. But that's not the point. There are some things that a toxic person might do, and that a lot of toxic people that I know have done. So, here's a fun little comprehensive list, so then you can not be around those people. They will guilt trip you. They won't listen when you say no. They'll make themselves the victim, get jealous easily, and not respect your boundaries. Just all things that will probably make you feel like crap in the short term or the long term. The best way to deal with these people is to cut them out. But obviously that could be either hard or impossible, depending on your situation. If you're a minor and you live with that person, say a parent or a grandparent, then it's going to be really hard to cut them out, because I don't think that anybody really wants to be homeless. And unfortunately, that is the reality for a lot of LGBT youth. It can be really painful to cut people out if they're someone that you've been close to for a really long time, or if they've taken care of you, or if you've taken care of them, and if you value them, but sometimes it's kind of necessary if they don't show you the same respect or kindness, because you can give your heart to somebody, but that doesn't mean that they won't crush it. It's pretty easy to build a support system as long as you have good people in your life. Support can come from pretty much anywhere. Friends, family, neighbors, pets, fictional characters. That's more emotional support, but etc. Support groups are really good to start up your support system or get support from people who are or have been in similar situations to yours, because having somebody to relate to can do a lot for your mental health. Build your system by letting the good people in your life know that you really appreciate them and you're actually telling them about your problems. Because, and I cannot stress this enough, tell people about your problems. Nobody can help you if you don't tell them how they can help you or what's even wrong in the first place. It seems so simple, but a lot of people think that it will hurt their pride or make them less of a man in the toxic masculinity case, or just less respectable among their peers in the everything else case. But that's not true. Admitting your problems can make you so much happier and just really help your life. So please admit your problems. If not for anybody else, then for yourself. But it'll just make you so much better. Asking for help is literally a global necessity. Humans are social creatures. We need to ask things. We need to communicate. So, if you admit that you need help, then you're gonna be happier. That's just science. That's just common sense. But for a lot of mentally ill people, or just people in a really bad place in their life, they don't really see that. So, now I'm gonna talk about my journey, what I've been through, and how I've gotten to where I am today, to the point where I can actually talk about it, because, hooray, talking about things. I've just realized that this is basically just a pre-recorded therapy session. My therapist is going to be so proud of me. Hey, look, I talked about my problems for like a whole half hour. Please be proud of me. Oh yeah, fun thing about me. I have trust and commitment issues, but I also really need people to like me. And I've become less of a people pleaser over the years, but I still really need people to like me. So, it's caused problems. Anyways, before I really started to find my own identity, I was basically just a shell of how other people saw me. Somebody would call me stupid, and I would be like, oh yeah, that's me, I'm stupid. Or somebody would call me ugly, and it would be like, yep, that's it. Which really didn't, like I said with the toxic people, it just kind of brought down the vibes. Did not help at all. I think that my journey to self-discovery started when I moved out of my old school, which was super toxic, where I was bullied for like 6 years. It was not great. Didn't like that. Did not like that. But I had a lot of self-hate that I was actually suicidal and so depressed. It's important to note that at that time, I was 10. And I had been extremely depressed for a couple of years. I hadn't gone to therapy at that point. I had started to go to therapy after. But it's never good to be that depressed at such a young age. Nobody should ever have to go through what I went through. It also didn't really help that everything, like I said before, everything that other people said about me, I believed. So I didn't really know who I was. I only had a vague idea, and I only had like a couple of personality traits that I could assign to myself that weren't assigned to me by other people. When I was in 5th grade, we moved to a different town, and even though the person we were living with was super toxic, because it was my mom's ex-boyfriend, not at the time, they were dating at the time, but he was emotionally abusive, and I was basically trapped in my room the whole time, so woohoo, go us. But it got me out of that school, which was great, because now I'm in the school that I'm in now, which is what I'm doing this project for, so pretty happy. But anyways, I wasn't getting happier in that house, obviously. I was actually getting worse, obviously, because before there wasn't an emotionally abusive boyfriend in the mix. But now there was an emotionally abusive, well, for me, stepdad in the mix, so... Or stepdad, big glowing quotation marks. Even though it did really suck, it helped me kind of explore more because I had better friends. Or just friends in general. And I was able to confide in them and actually talk to people. Which, again... Can't stress this enough. Talk to people. But people had tried to bully me in the school that I had moved to when I first moved out of the toxic school. But I figured, hey, I've spent enough of my life being bullied and tossed around by kids and adults alike. So I'm going to try to build myself up so then that doesn't happen anymore. I wanted to create the self-image before I died trying. And I did. As I mentioned earlier, I was super down in the dumps when I first started to make an image for myself. I was really, really depressed, and I never left my room, and the only person that I could talk to in the household that we were in was my mom. Plus side, I'm super close with my mom. She is my best friend, and I love her so, so much. Downside, I was also super depressed because we were being emotionally abused by this guy and his 2 kids. But I still said, hey, I'm gonna make an image for myself. So, even though it sucked, I still wanted to kind of persevere. The way that I had started to view myself was still shaped on people's opinions, but I only focused on the positives. So instead of somebody, when they said, hey, you're pretty ugly, I would be like, oh, thanks, you think I'm pretty? Yes, in that exact pretentious voice. But my point is, people would still say negative stuff about me, but I would just kind of, over time I had learned to tune it out, and I didn't listen to that negative stuff, because why would I? Like I said, I spent enough time being bullied and tossed around that I was kind of done at this point, and I really didn't want to go through that again. So it was a new town, new school, new year, new me, that whole shebang, and I figured it was a perfect time to try and not be the nerd alone on the steps with a science textbook in their hands. The bright side to that was that I was smart. I still am smart, but I had gotten assigned the label of the smart kid because I had spent so much time studying because there was nothing else to do because I had no friends. I'm laughing because it hurts. But to me, that was really positive, because I was like, yes, I have worked so hard to try and be a smart kid. So, thank goodness I'm a smart kid, and everybody else thinks so too. But I was so glad that I had finally gotten some recognition for those years of exile, without a better way of putting it. I still like that label, and I still have that label, because it is positive. Causes me to put a lot of pressure on myself when it comes to school, which I am working on. That's an entirely different episode, but I am working on it. But I also know that even if I do put a lot of pressure on myself, as long as I don't have a panic attack over it, then it's not a bad kind of pressure. It encourages me to do better in school, and it encourages me to actually try, like, super duper hard. But my point is that people will assign you labels. Most of those will suck, but some will stick, and they'll help you to find out who you are. At year 2-ish of leaving my old school, I had started the next step in my journey. Not lingering on what people say about me, and building my own identity by myself. I had the basic building blocks from what others thought, and what I thought was positive, and actually me. But I needed to know who I actually was. Couple of things to note before we go any further. 1. Since I was still young, I was at the point in my life where I was naturally questioning myself. You know, the whole Erickson's, is that the guy's name? I don't know. But the stages of development where it's like identity versus confusion, that kind of thing. Yeah, I was at that stage. So I was naturally questioning myself, and I didn't really realize that I was doing these things. I just, looking back, I know what happened, and I know what I went through to go through it. And number 2, you should only build your identity out of positive or neutral things. Negative things aren't identity, they're self-doubt, blah, or identity negotiation. Neither of those things are great, neither of those things are super fun, so just neutral things like, you know what? Not even neutral things, just positive things, if you can. Just not negative things, please. It'll just hurt you in the long run. Anyways, back on track before I start to ramble. I started realizing my interests and passions, and then focusing on how I react in different situations, or even just by my lonesome, all by myself. By realizing these things, I could turn them into personality traits, and with time, even realized what I wanted to do when I grew up. I realized that I had a huge passion for space. I love space. Space is great. And I realized that I also like building things and drawing things and math and science. So, through a little bit of research, I figured, aerospace engineer. That'll be fun. And now I know what I want for my future career, and I've discovered my passion. But I had spun that into a personality trait. Like, I'm smart, I'm inquisitive, I'm very persuasive. That's a special talent of mine. But whoop, knocked the table. But I had realized my passion, and I had in turn realized what I wanted to do. It won't be like that for everybody. Jobs are terrifying, but I'm lucky and I did realize. And then that leads us to the third step, which was to be confident in the personality that I had built for myself and not let anything anyone said to get to me. This one sucked. This one was hard. This one took so much time. And it actually took another move for me to actually be confident in myself, because I was at that other school where I had friends and it was great. And then I moved again, and now I'm at the school that I'm at now. But that didn't suck. I had friends here from cadets, and I had their friends that I got to know. Now I have an even better friend group with people who I love, and I would do anything for them. But the only way that I accomplished this was finally gaining some awesomely loyal and truthful friends, and gradually becoming more confident in my own skin. Coming out helped with this so much. I've become so much more confident in the few months that I've been out. But that is also because I had awesome friends who egged me on, and who helped me in coming out, and I did so much research. Oh my god, so much research. My phone was my best friend in like the couple of weeks leading up, because so much research. Side note, when I came out to my mom, we'll talk about this more in the next episode, which is on coming out, but when I came out to my mom, I gave her two things. I gave her an envelope, and I gave her two things in that envelope. One, my coming out note, saying, hey, guess what? I'm a boy. Ha ha. And number two, a list of resources. It had blogs, online books, plural, online research packages for parents of trans teens, and just websites and so many things. I think I had a playlist and maybe a podcast. But no, it wasn't a podcast, because that's why I'm making this podcast. Some people have a free resource from somebody who's been through this, so then they can listen and get first-hand experience. But yeah, anyways, that was a side tangent. We're back on track. I swear I do have ADD. I was gonna say I swear I don't have ADD, but I do. Yeah, so it took 2 moves and multiple years of therapy to get to the point that I'm at now, and I can't really tell you how I got there, because I think the answer is just time and support and people that you actually like. I wish that there was an easy way, or that this was a simple step, but it isn't, and that's okay. But now, I'm legitimately confident and comfortable in my identity that I've built for myself. And even though it took a while, such a long time, I am super glad to be here. So relieved, too. I can't tell you that it'll be easy. In fact, it'll probably kick your ass. Hard. But you'll have a few panic attacks, you'll have a few anxiety attacks, which are different, and you'll just have an overall crisis for a little. But I can tell you for a fact that it is so worth it, and you will feel so much better once you're done. But remember how I mentioned research before? It's so important, not only when you're figuring out your identity, but if you're coming out, because like this episode is kind of an all-encompassing thing. I know in the intro I said it was for trans stuff, but heckin' bamboozled, this is for everyone, because everybody has to identify themselves. Trans people have it a little harder, because then they're questioning, the first label that was put on them when they were born, but everybody has a hard time identifying themselves. So I made this episode all-encompassing, so yeah, heckin' bamboozled, but I mentioned research before, which is so important when you're planning to come out, so you actually know your stuff and can't be bullied into dropping your identity. And I'm gonna say some things to help you with that research, because I like research. So, I know a lot of good sources. And just side note, again, these are all things that I used during my identity crisis, for lack of a better word. They might not be for everybody, because these are mostly for queer kids. Keyword on quit, not quids, kids, and queer, but kids. But they do have sections that help anybody with just, figuring out their stuff, they're getting into their mojo. And most of these are North American or Canadian, because I'm Canadian. So, yeah, just keep that in mind. First is Clinic with a K. I'm not gonna lie that their website's kind of in terms of design, because I'm a design kind of geek, but if you live in Manitoba, they have an awesome in-house place with in-house resources that include support groups for people of all ages, counseling, healthcare, and more. I went to their injection clinic, and it taught me how to inject testosterone into myself. I was trying to think of the word. Usually I describe it as stabbing myself, but that might be a bad thing to say to a bunch of strangers on the internet. So, yeah, injecting testosterone. And it helped so much, because I did my first shot, on Sunday, this Sunday, or I guess last Sunday by the time that this is released, but it helped me so much to be more confident in my skills, so 10 out of 10 recommend. Please check out their website, even though it's mostly for trans people, and trans people over 16. In Manitoba, at least, I don't know what it is for the rest of the country, trans people under 16 go to G'day, and G'day is for minors, and they do that, but Clinic is for 16 and over, where they do all that, and they have different processes, but it's the same kind of thing, to get you on hormones, get you surgeries that you want, all of that. But they have a ton of information on identity, mostly healthcare, but still 10 out of 10, highly recommend. Kids Help Phone. Kids Help Phone has call and text lines with trained professionals for 24/7, 365, all of the time. And it's not for immediate crisis, but it is for just if you need to talk. It could be for crisis, but I would recommend that you call. Later on, I'll mention the Trevor Project. They have LGBT suicide hotlines, so please call those if you are in crisis. Kids Help Phone is more for just if you need to talk and get it off your chest if you have nobody else to talk to. I will say, though, it's only for people up to age 20, because it's Kids Help Phone, so it's for minors. Up next, Rainbow Resource Center. I feel like a sports announcer. Next up to bat is this gay thing. Woo! Anyways, Rainbow Resource Center is a great place, also Manitoba-based. I'm promoting a lot of local businesses, but they're awesome. And so, even though they have a great in-house location, I would argue that their website is even better. They have a super great list of resources and some awesome support groups if you can make it to their building. But if you can't, their website has basically everything that you would ever need to know ever. But if it doesn't have everything that you would ever need to know ever, Trevor Project, which is an amazing online presence made to help save the lives of LGBT youth. I just coughed and I don't think the microphone picked it up, so whoo! But anyways, they have an LGBT-specific suicide hotline that runs 24/7, just like Kids Help Phone. They have a chat space if you need somebody to talk to if you're not in immediate danger. They have a text number if you can't call but still need to contact the suicide hotline. And again, cannot stress this enough. If you are in immediate crisis, please contact the suicide hotlines. They can help. They can do so much for you. They have trained professionals. They know what they're doing. They have an online support center, which with FAQs and stuff, so then you can figure stuff out before you come out. And they have a social networking platform called Trevor Space for queer people under 25 so then you can just talk to people like you. They have forums and stuff, and it's a little bit not outdated because it's relatively new, but kind of hard to navigate if you haven't spent a lot of time on it. There's even more info on their website, so please highly recommend go check it out. Yeah, I think that's it. That's it. That's all for this episode, so please support this podcast by finding it on Twitter and Instagram. The Twitter handle is kind of weird because Twitter puts a limit on how many letters you can put in your, URL? Is that it? Yeah, sure. We're calling it a URL. Username. No? Tag? Anyways, it's at TRNSMRM. Wait, that's not right. Forget me. TRNSFRM_podcast. Again, that's at TRNSFRM_podcast. It's supposed to be like transform, but like without all of the letters. I think in mysterious ways. But yeah, transformative was too many letters because Twitter is stupid. You'll soon find out that I have a personal vendetta against Twitter. I just don't like it that much. Instagram is normal though, transformative_podcast. Please also remember that you can now find this podcast on plenty of platforms, such as Anchor, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Pocket Casts, Radio Public, and Breaker. Anyways, thank you all so much for listening. I hope this episode has done something to help you all with the emotional roller coaster that is figuring out your identity. I have been Parker, and this has been the first official episode of Transformative, a how-to guide. See you next episode!